It's to be expected in spring ball that the hype is going to be high, it's going to be loud, and that certainly includes Bryce Underwood. It really seems like the Bryce Underwood hype is off the rails. You have a report from On3. You've got defensive players now saying things about him that are like absolute music to your ears. Let's talk about as much as we can on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. I was down in Ann Arbor again today for spring ball. We talked to a couple defensive players about, spring ball, and then, casually, Bryce Underwood comes up in conversation. Just like, casual conversation. You're sitting there asking like, oh, so how's the defense going? And, how's Wink Martindale? Yeah, what has he been doing? It's maybe different. And by the way, just kind of, Bryce Underwood, what's he like? What's he all about? Some really some things that'll make you salivate kind of came out of today. Now, first, I had just gotten to Ann Arbor when I saw the Pete Nakos report. Now, this is kind of a report, but it, saying like he's kind of on the, trending towards being the starter in Ann Arbor. I know I've been saying 4 games and then he starts. It sounds like Mikey Keene has not been a full go in spring, and I think that behooves Bryce. This is the opposite of 2022. Right, where it behooved Cade McNamara. It would have behooved Cade McNamara if he was in J.J. McCarthy's shoes, not vice versa, right? Like J.J. would have been the obvious starter going into fall had it been all J.J. instead of Cade. And because of that, it took a lot for him to kind of get going. But it sounds like it's been mostly between Bryce, who's been getting the bulk of the playing time with the ones, and then Jaden Davis, who got some really good pub from Marlon Klein today. We can talk about that a little bit later. But I think that's good. But the things that were said about Bryce, right? Like it makes you just kind of say, okay, this is really good. So I'm gonna read you a few of the quotes here. This is from Rayshaun Benny. He said he's made some crazy throws. You look at him and it's just like, wow, his frame is crazy. So that's enough in itself, but he's going to be good. He threw one in the back of the end zone. It was a jump ball. It was just perfect placement, and the wide receiver went up to get it. It was a good throw. Gave a lot of hope. Bright things. And so then I asked Zeke Berry about that, and I said, Rayshaun Benny says he's got this perfect ball placement. What do you have to say? He says, I feel the same way he does. We haven't had a quarterback like that in a while. I'll probably say since JJ. I mean, so that's 1 year, but still. And I feel like having him out there and seeing what he can do, he's going to change this offense for us. That's what I led the article with. He's going to change this offense for us. Like, that's kind of a big, bold statement. And it's got to, like, the perfect ball placement and all that. And then you add in the fact that you have what Derek Moore said earlier in the week about how, like, yeah, we thought we had him contained and then he ran on us. And then we as a defense were like, oh, man. It was just like the way he said it had like this feeling of ultimate dejection of like, yeah, we were doing good, and then, we thought we had him finally. Like, he wasn't gonna get us again. And then before long, it's like, oh, when he's got legs too. So I asked Rayshaun Benny about it. He said he's fast. I was about to say he got out on the edge, and then he was a little faster than I thought. And he said this with that full dejection. He's like, then he gets out on the edge, and he's faster than I thought he was going to be. Said, I found out, yeah, but nah. It's just different because it had a different thing to look for outside of just a throwing quarterback. He can run around if he needs to, make plays happen, extend plays. That's what it adds. It just changed our rush rather. But it's good for us to see because we're going to play those types of quarterbacks throughout the season. Yeah, not quite that type, but still. Like that's the dimension that we kind of forget about. We think about Bryce dropping back, throwing dimes, and then you have this added aspect to it. And then Zeke Berry says, I can see why he's rated how high he is. I mean, that guy's a worker, a competitor, a great quarterback. He's going to do a lot of great things for this university. I mean, do you have one end where it kind of feels like the players are almost tired of answering questions about Bryce Underwood, right? Because like that's just he's going to be the focal point of this team for 3 years. That's just what it's going to be. Like there are no players that can come in between now and then that are going to have this type of hype. This is higher hype than what JJ McCarthy had, even though he had really high hype. And at that same point, JJ McCarthy kind of got similar treatment, just maybe not as much because there were other things going on, other stars, right? Like he was going to have to wait his turn a little bit. Aiden Hutchinson was coming back from injury and then ended up balling out pretty early. You know, you had the run game, Blake Corum bursting out, you know, and so he was able to be a star early. It's a little bit different because you're coming off of a season where the offense was wandering through its own proverbial desert, right? It left Egypt and was just kind of like looking around and, oh, here's Meribah. And, okay, we're almost to the Jordan and now we can't go back. And now we're getting attacked by Moab and so on and so forth, right? That's what it was. It was just kind of like, it was listless, aimless, didn't really have a trajectory or anything. And now you have like offense that feels significantly more complete, not just at the quarterback position. I think we'll be talking about more than just Bryce come the season, because then I think we'll be talking about the 2 running backs. I would not be surprised if we're talking about some receivers, whether they're guys who are here now or guys who are here later. I think that there's just going to be a lot to kind of contend with, a lot to look at and say, okay, this is worlds better. The good news is, on top of all of that, is you've got a defense that I think is going to be extremely good. And I think that there's a lot of evidence to support that. But as for now, I mean, we're gonna keep our eyes on the Bryce Underwood hype train, because he just brings a lot of things that no other quarterback Michigan's have had. This is no offense to JJ McCarthy. Bryce's ceiling is much higher than JJ's. When I say that, that's with all respect to JJ. Right? JJ could make the throws. JJ could run around. JJ was a competitor and a baller. Bryce, it has the chance to leave this university basically with people saying, go ahead and build the statue. Now, will that happen? That's up to not just Bryce, but the whole team, right? The team's got to perform. But he has that type of talent. And if you haven't seen him in person, I mean, you can just see it. Like, I was walking with the M Live guys out of Shem, and Bryce is walking in, and you can just see it in the way he walks, right? Like, it's, as someone who worked in Hollywood for 4 years, you can often tell like the massive stars just because they have an air about them. That's what Bryce has. He has that air about him. Like, they walk in and it's just, you can feel the persona on top of everything else. And, you know, obviously that's not all about what the actor's about. They have to be able to act most of the time. But it's the same thing with Bryce. He has to be able to play football, and I've seen him play football, and he's absolutely incredible. So it's going to be exciting. Let's talk a little bit about the defense. There was a couple things that kind of came out of the defense. Actually, I do have one negative thing to say about Bryce. It's not really a complete negative, but it just shows that he's human. We'll get to that as well as talk about the defense here in just a moment. But before we do, we are all about the stats, because numbers don't lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. All right, we didn't end up having our Thursday show. I'm hoping, this never works out, so don't hold me to it. I'm hoping that we will have a makeup show. Now, if Michigan basketball wins, we have a scheduled makeup show. But if, which we'll have out around 1 o'clock. But if they lose, then it's up to me. But prayers out to Zach Blackerby, Locked On Auburn host, who's been battling illness all week. So didn't end up happening yesterday. I ended up deciding to take the day off due to just feeling kind of run down myself. But we'll do our best to make up for it. If we can, hopefully it won't be like 2 episodes on Monday. Instead, hopefully it will be an episode Saturday, maybe one on Sunday. But again, we say this all the time. It doesn't end up working out. But I think this weekend's a little clearer than most of them have tended to be. So I think it might be might actually work. All right. So there was one bad thing mentioned about Bryce, and Zeke Berry did say that there have been a couple people who have picked him off. There, and it isn't Will Johnson. He's not around anymore. Charles Woodson didn't come to a practice and sky out of nowhere and take him down. Jaden Mangum and Max Reyes were the two who apparently have gotten the better of Bryce Underwood. It's to be expected. You get him out in practice. That's great. That's even just a far cry from 2022 JJ. Fall camp, though. Keep in mind, he didn't participate in spring ball. Fall camp, it was, for every 2 amazing plays he makes one really boneheaded play. Like every time that was like the thing. Like, yeah, he does some good things and then he does some absolutely terrible bad things. I mean, if he's got 2 and he's got most of these practices under his belt, that's fine. But just so we know he's human, just so it isn't like every pass he throws is a touchdown. Every single thing is a game winner, so that's interesting. You got Rayshaun Benny out there today talking some big hype on his own about the defense. He said one of the things is he came back because he's like, I think we can win a natty. And I think that the interesting thing is when he talked about the defensive line today, because we were asking him about some names came up that we haven't really heard, which I thought was really good. He mentioned Eno Etta, which was, I thought, really, really good. Just to hear that name, right? Because what have we been saying all spring? He's one I want to see dominate in the spring game. I want to see the guys that were balling out last year, or in so far, in spring, that we're getting that spring hype to have a big spring game, right? Because sometimes it's just a year behind, right? They start making plays in practice, doesn't translate to the field, and then it ends up looking good as well. He really liked the transfers. He says he said, I like Ike. I don't know if Rayshaun knew that he was doing 1950s presidential campaign propaganda, but he was. There were those guys that he talked about. He said the transfers are really coming in and doing some really good things. But the thing about it is, the thing that really stood out to me was that he said this. He said, what we got on the defensive line is depth that feels very similar to 2023. And that's the type of thing that I've been saying for the last however long. I've been saying it has that look because in the middle, it feels like they can go 5-6 deep at this point, right? Like you've got the 2 guys who started the ReliaQuest Bowl, Rayshaun Benny, Trey Pierce. You've got the 2 transfers, Trey Williams, Damon Payne. You've got the other guys that you think that can probably do really well, Ike Iwunnah and Etta. So now you've got 6 guys that can rotate in the middle. Only 4 guys right now on the outside, but the good news is you can do some other things. You can bring Jayshawn Barham and do some different things with the linebackers as edges and what have you. You can bring blitzes and just keep what you've got out there. But it does feel deeper. It feels a lot deeper. And with that, he's like, I think that we can win a natty. And here's the thing. People are going to scoff at that based off of what happened last year. At the same time, I think that they're in a position where you can look at it defensively, look at how they finished the season and what they held the two of the 3 best let's say 2 of the 4 best offensive teams they played, because they played Texas and Oregon early in the year. Ohio State probably had the best offense that they were going to go up against. And then Alabama was within the top 4 and they just completely decimated those teams. And Indiana was a top offensive team as well. And while he got out to a hot start, they held him to what was it, 17 yards in the second half? So to be able to continue on that trajectory, especially given the schedule, defensively, feels and looks solid. And then if you have what Zeke Berry says offensively, we feel like it's going to take off now. I mean, that's great. That's everything that you want and you hope and you need. Zeke Berry adding to it, I said, who's the player that no one's talking about that everyone's going to be talking about? Now, he named a player that that if you're watching this show or listening to this show, if you're like a Michigan diehard, you absolutely have been talking about this guy, especially since the bowl game, and that's Brandyn Hillman. He's just like, he's just become incredible. See, I could pull up the quote. That just feels like it's a lot. I think am I already on him? No, I'm on Rayshaun Benny. Let's look at the quote just to give you a little bit more. He says, I've been with him. That's my guy. Seeing him on the field and in practice, behind the scenes, nobody really sees what he can do. But as the DBs, we can see what kind of player he can be, and I'm excited to see what he can do this season. So that's exciting as well, to be able to have a player like Brandyn Hillman who could take that next step. I mean, you expected to be Rod Moore and Brandyn Hillman at safety. Zeke Berry sounds like he's cross-training everywhere, but would likely start at corner, which I think we would all expect. And he mentioned a lot of names of guys who have been working at nickel, and some of them are intriguing. TJ Metcalf, I think, not because now I'm starting to think that it might be TJ Metcalf at safety, or at nickel rather. That kind of makes sense to me. Right now, he mentioned Jeremiah Lowe, who I think, like, from body type, that makes sense as well. I think he was like the fourth name he mentioned, but still not a name that anyone's really talking about. So they've got some options, and I'm curious to see what Jaden McBurrows, if he comes back and if he can stay healthy, right? Like, that's kind of the thing with some of these guys, staying healthy for a guy like Jaden McBurrows, having other guys that, I saw Morian Walker walking in. It's like, and he's just so much taller than I remember him being. And it's like, can he actually do something with that? That's the hope, man, as far as offensively. But nonetheless, all right, let's talk a little bit of Michigan basketball. We're kind of up against it a lot. So some of this is why I relegated it to segment 3, because the staying power of talking about Michigan basketball 3 hours before tip, probably not high. So we're going to get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, daylight savings time snuck up on us again. And if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, and I 100% am still weeks after it happened, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Otherwise, you end up taking a nap on the couch while watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That happened to someone involved with this. But I have been staying up late watching all the tournament action, and 5 Hour Energy helps keep me up the next day. Whether I'm at a game or traveling, 5 Hour Energy is easy to grab and keeps me feeling refreshed. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. All right, it's going to be a tough task for Michigan tonight, playing against Auburn. We'll make this our little preview, considering we didn't end up having it yesterday. With what happened yesterday, the SEC schools in particular, I'm looking at Alabama, Auburn's rivalry counterpart, who, interesting stat from them. They're really, really good with this. They're maybe not quite this good at the outside, but if you would have taken away all the 2-point shots that Alabama made and just kept it to threes, they still would have won. Like, that's what they're working with. And that's the thing, is Auburn's a very good 3-point shooting team as well, if memory serves. They've got the 3rd best offense according to KenPom. They've got the 11th best defense according to KenPom as well. Keeping in mind that Michigan has the 39th offense and 13th defense. So they're not as good on either side. But Michigan is the type of team, like we have talked about quite a bit on this show, that they can play with anybody. Like, they have gotten run out the gym, but it's been very rare. It's only happened like 3 times this year out of all of the losses that they've had. It's only happened like 3 times that they've gotten run out the gym, and they've avenged one of them against Purdue. Actually, they've avenged it twice. They're the type of team that can come to play any given game. So I wouldn't write them off. Now, they are sizable underdogs in this one. And Auburn being a 1 seed, Auburn being the team that many thought to be the best in college basketball for almost the entire year, that's not surprising that that's where they're at. Now, where Michigan could probably get them a little bit is tempo. Michigan's a bit better when it comes to tempo than Auburn. If they can run and make layups, make layups. Don't not make layups. Don't look like you're making a layup. And then, all of that. I think that's a big thing. So they're going to have to play with tempo. Alabama plays, they're the best tempo team in the country, which I think is also, you see that with the jacking up threes. This might be the game where it's like, I want to see Michigan try to feed it inside early and see how that works. And I might not be that mad if they're hoisting up threes. Now, here's the thing. They need to be making them. Otherwise, I'm going to get mad. But at the same time, like if you're going to run a gun on them and you can get an open look because you're going quickly, then that's really going to help you out as far as that's concerned. But you also look at it as far as like the teams that Auburn's faced are rated much higher on KenPom from both the net rating, the offensive rating, and the defensive rating compared to what Michigan's faced. Not by wide margins, but that theoretically, these are teams that Auburn's just a little bit ahead of them. Now, like I've said a ton, even earlier here, Michigan can seemingly play with anybody, and they're just going to need to have their game. I'm going to tell you this right now so that you feel prepared. It's going to feel dire at moments. It's going to feel, because remember, Kansas was a 1 seed in 2013. And I remember watching that game, and we went into that season, though, thinking this is Michigan's shot. This is Michigan's ability to run. At least that's what I was thinking. I wasn't covering the team, but I certainly went into the year thinking like that, Trey Burke junior year, second year, whatever it was, like this is going to be a team to contend with, and it's going to be able to make a run. And it was somewhere in the middle of the first half. I'm like, I don't think so. Doesn't even look like they can play with these guys, and then they end up winning the game. So you're going to have to be able to sustain the runs, right? Basketball is a game of runs. You're just going to have to be able to sustain some of those. And you're just going to need to do like you kind of did in some of the moments that we've seen in like the Texas A&M game, where it's just like you're getting what you need when you need it, when like you're not stalling out when they're stalling out. Right? Like you just can't have like these 5-minute stretches of not scoring like we've kind of seen recently. Early in the year, the basketball team wasn't really doing that. I mean, they might have had that period a little bit early in the second half, but generally like that was kind of the nice change of pace, the breath of fresh air compared to what we'd seen in the Juwan Howard and even the John Beilein eras, where it was just like, and here they are on another 5-minute scoring drought. And that's kind of come to play recently. So they're going to need to find a way to score field goals even when things feel dire. And they're going to have to go on some defensive runs. Now, the good news is having the length that they have at two positions is enough to frustrate just about anybody. And Auburn might not be immune to that. Now, they've only lost 5 games on the season compared to Michigan's 9. So they don't lose that often, but they also didn't win. They lost in the semifinal round of the SEC tournament. They can be beat. They had not been playing the best basketball leading into the postseason. So Michigan just needs to make them feel a little bit not confident. And I'm curious to see, because Tre Donaldson says, like, I know all the ins and outs. I know how they run. I know what they want to do because I was there. And I've been telling the coaches and everything. So that could be a secret weapon. Danny Wolf was part of a Yale team that beat them last year. That could be part of a secret weapon. Not really sure if that's going to pay off, but it could. But as of now, I don't think, I'm not doing this to to troll or anything. I think that Michigan probably exits the tournament today. I said entering the Big Ten tournament that I thought that they would be a second weekend team and that they'd win 2, maybe 3. But I think that the road to it all stops here. I just think it's too talented of a team. It's too tough of a draw. And I think that if Michigan would have been able to be, if they were able to be a 3 seed and play, a different team, maybe it would have been a little different. But I think that, Auburn is a pick in my bracket. And I have 2 brackets. Auburn's a pick on one of them and Florida's on the other one. So I have Michigan. I have on one bracket Michigan going out tonight. The other one I have them going to the Final Four. That's kind of my but that's kind of more of my not what I think is going to happen. That's my more of what I want to happen bracket. So unfortunately, I think Michigan's night ends tonight. I'm taking Auburn and the 8.5 points or whatever it is at this point. Anyway, that's going to do it for us today. Like I said, we're going to try to do some weekend shows, make up for we missed Tuesday or Thursday. We missed one earlier in the month. So we're going to try to make up for those on the weekend. Kind of makes a little bit more sense to try to do them on days where I'm not taking the day off as it is. So anyway, we will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Peace.